Hey everybody, I'm Polydub and I'm joined by Inquisitor 8.1 and we're going to be reviewing X-Men Volume 2, Number 1. Silence, Inquisitor doesn't care. Okay.
Well, no, it's not that at all. I fucking love this issue, man. I remember back when I was a kid, one of the highlights of my month was going to our local comic book store. Me and my brother, we were very much into collecting all of the X titles back in the day. And yeah, for anyone that's remotely interested in comics, they know exactly what that entails for this franchise in particular. You know, you had the X-Men, you had the Uncanny X-Men, you had X-Force, X-Factor, Excalibur, you know, all of the different, well, not to mention Wolverine, you know, and all those other kinds of comics. And then you had the four shot mini series, all that kind of stuff. So it was no,
I noticed that you didn't mention the New Mutants because no one likes to talk about.
well, you know, New Mutants it was okay. It was okay. It gave us Deadpool. Yeah.
Well, you know what? I'll say this. As much as people hate on Rob Liefeld, and with lots of just reason, he took a comic book, New Mutants, that nobody gave a fuck about and turned it into a super mega hot seller. Go figure. And that's not easy to do.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah, he definitely did do that. I mean, you know, Rob Liefeld, there's a lot of criticism for his art, but there's not a whole lot of criticism for his creativity. Without him and without some of the creations that he helped to bring to the light of day, we wouldn't have a lot of the sort of comic book moments that a lot of us cherish. But we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves.
We are.
We're talking, we're gushing about a comic book here. You need to do intro things. So do your intro things.
Well, the intro things are largely intro to the whole series, like why we're doing what we're doing. Inquisitor and I, we're both big fans of comic books. And thankfully, we both have different interests in comic books. He's definitely more the X-Men fanatic. So he's our expertise, if you will, on this. Do you see what I did there? On this particular issue, I did buy this issue back in the day, way back in the day. I was never an X-Men fan. I'm much more of a Spider-Man guy and always have been. I collected all the Spider titles, which are certainly not as extensive as the X titles, the mutant titles, but it got pretty extensive nonetheless. We decided in some late night Discord chats that we should do like a comic review show, just if only to get our conversations out of Discord, right? Because nobody can hear them there. And that way we get to interact with you guys. Hopefully somebody's listening right now. Our ideas for the series that we wanted to do would be both classic and new, basically a fun review of comics, discussion in and around comics. We want it to be salty, fun, hopefully have some insights. And mostly of all, it's going to be highly, highly subjective because it's our opinions, your opinions, not anyone's objective opinion. Like I said, we want it to be interactive. We make no claims to having unassailable expertise that what we're saying is the dead fact. We're going to say things that are, oh, we were off by a month on this issue, or we didn't get this character's origin story quite right, or whatever. We want to hear your thoughts and opinions and all the lore-heavy, nerdy corrections that are sure to result. Yeah, that's basically where it's at. So I guess we should talk about why we picked this issue of all X-Men issues to go with instead of like Uncanny X-Men or Original X-Men #1 from way back in the 60s. Yeah. Because this was an old school comic from when comics were like fresh when we were both kids. You know what I mean? Like this was one of those seminal issues, right? It was, we're both huge fans of it. And I think the original suggestion, I said, why not go after, in the first review, literally the best-selling comic book of all time.
Yeah.
X-Men Volume 2 #1.
It is hands down the biggest selling comic book of all time because of the speculator boom. And there was also the fact that this was the first X-Men #1 since the 60s. They'd never done a reboot like that. It was always just, the X-Men, then it became, I think it was like the Astonishing X-Men, and then it was the Uncanny X-Men. And then now they split off the Uncanny X-Men into the Uncanny X-Men and then X-Men. So this was seminal in the event because I think this was also around the same time that DC was hyping the death of Superman. So there was a lot of interest in the sort of speculator boom at the time, where there would be a lot of people that would buy comics because they're saying, "Oh man, this is a big moment in history. This is gonna be worth something someday." And of course, since everyone bought it, it's worth nothing.
Right, and it's the number is, and I looked it up at the Guinness Book of World Records site, 8.1 million issues sold of this guy, which like dwarfs its nearest competitor by multiple orders of magnitude.
Oh yeah.
A lot of what explains that high sales, of course, is the fact that there's variant covers, 4+1 variant covers, as a lot of people know. And as you can see, there were 4 individual newsprint editions, like newsprint paper editions, each one that had a different cover, and when put together formed an overall, what you want to call it, not mosaic, but a 4-part individual scene. And when put all together, it was a whole scene of the X-Men attacking Magneto. And then the 5th one, +1, was the super thick glossy paper edition that had double gatefolds on both the front and back cover, which you could fold out and there would be the entire edition. So there was 5 copies of the same damn comic. And like Inquisitor said, during the speculator boom, which undoubtedly jumped up its numbers a lot. Variant covers are always a way of pushing up sales of a single issue, but holy shit, this was back in the day when the speculator boom was at its hype. And so, or at its height rather, and hype, the height of its hype. Yeah.
Both.
Yeah. And lest we forget, this is the last storyline written by Chris Claremont, the Forever and a Day X-Men writer, the hyper talented Chris Claremont. Inquisitor and I are both huge fans of his stuff.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And
I'll say, go ahead and name your personal favorite Chris Claremont.
Personal favorite?
Yeah.
Well,
that's a question. Let's say
Days of Future Past.
Days of Future Past. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll say that's
I guess because it's so high concept. Like it's just you want to do what? Like it's just so out there. Like
I'll say you know what it is for me, and I think this shows a little bit of the divide, at least in what we expect from our comics. For me, it was God Loves, Man Kills.
Why?
Mainly because it was a story about one person's sort of prejudice and how it can spiral out of control and hurt someone else entirely by proxy. The story begins not with Trask or any of the X-Men. It doesn't begin in Manchester at all. It begins in Central Park, New York, with 2 kids, with one kid getting shot and killed in Central Park, New York. First time I've ever seen a child being murdered in a comic book, which might be a little bit against comic book code, just a little.
It might be. It's amazing some of the things that slipped by the comic books authority back in the 90s. It was, but
well, that was in the 80s, I think.
That was in the 80s. Okay.
I believe it was. Let me just fact check myself here, but yeah, God Loves, Man Kills is one of those books that it's not high concept in its science fiction aspects. It's high concept in the fact that there's socio-political implications in the sort of acts that you partake in, and it to me, it's what the X-Men have always symbolized.
Which is what?
Yeah, the sort of struggle against prejudice. It was 1982, by the way. God Loves, Man Kills. So this was the sort of team of X-Men when it was let's see here, Cyclops, Nightcrawler, Jean Grey, Iceman, Shadowcat, Colossus. I think it was it, and Professor Xavier, of course. Yeah, it was one of their shorter roster years.
So speaking of particular dates, and trying not to go on the million and one tangents we do on, this particular comic is artistried and penciled by none other than Jim Lee. We're looking at the cover right now, and it's, oh man, the character design, which is one of the points that I'm just gonna like pound on in this review. How incredibly sweet this comic is. For it's a #1, and it's written as you don't even need to know who the X-Men are. It's done in such a way that it's not painfully eye-rolling, like, yes, we know this. Like modern comic books, like current comic books, they all have the intro page on them, right? Spider-Man bitten by a radioactive spider, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, do you really need to do this every as an intro page, because they're always hoping to catch a new reader, as opposed to making it something that happens in story the way that Chris Claremont, in all of his inimitable talent, is able to do in this issue.
Yeah, I do find that this issue in particular is very interesting for that. With it also, like, it starts off specifically with this sort of like action movie sort of chase sort of thing, but then it immediately goes and shifts gears, like, just as abruptly into a different sort of action movie sort of chase going on that has absolutely nothing to do with the previous panels, and introduces the X-Men.
Yeah, it does. Great scene cutting, and I think that's a great segue to cut to in terms of the first page here. You're right. Like, it's a chase in space. We're hit is the first line. Like, somebody told me in storytelling, the best way to do it is in terms of the scene is get in late and leave early. Like, you've come in the middle of something that's happening right off the bat. It's not like they're taking off from the ground already. They're in space. They're having shuttle battles. There's plasma firing, and they're just, it starts off as exciting, right? It's comic booky all the way. One of the things you notice on the first page that stands in contrast to anything from, I don't know, I'm going to say, when would you say the beginning of decompressed storytelling happened, when there might be like 1 or 2 word bubbles on a page?
Oh, wow. I do find that a lot of comics around this time had stuff like that. I remember there was several issues of Green Arrow in the 80s, written by Mike Grell, that would go for pages without a word bubble.
Really?
Yeah, it was a story told entirely through visuals, which I find is actually a really good idea. The problem is that when you have too much going on with too little context. Like, don't get me wrong, Chris Claremont is hands down a master of the talkie comic.
Oh yeah, and that's the word that I'm probably going to use the most throughout this whole thing is talkie, and I don't mean it as a criticism. I mean it a touch of awesomeness. Yeah, it's a heavy reader. It's very talky, but it's always moving you along. And goddamn, this thing moves like gangbusters, because it's not slow pace in any sense of the word. It's just like, what are we doing out here? Where's Asteroid M? Okay, right away, they're looking for something called Asteroid M. Right. So where the devil is it? And one group is chasing another group who stole a shuttle. You learn all this on the front page, and then, which leads us right to the reveal. And I mean, yeah, what the hell of a, there's Asteroid M right behind it. The shuttles are clearly destroyed because there's fragments everywhere. Magneto, and all of his power, he's demonstrated as a powerful character right off the bat. Because just look at the relative size of him. Like, I mean, he's not supposed to be a monster, but he's presented as, like, what a wicked two-page splash. Like, a good use of the 2-page splash,
Mm-hmm.
And right off the bat, you learn things like, yeah, by Chris Claremont, Jim Lee, and penciled by Jim Lee, all the other stuff accordingly. Wow, I'm happy already. Yay!
Say one thing that I love about this this image in particular is the fact that it takes great pains to sit there and show all of the normal humans are in space, atmosphere suits, but
Right.
Magneto's just sitting there chilling in space with no helmet.
Right. All right. I am Magneto. This is my home. And the way that he has Magneto speak, the way Claremont has him speak is, what would you call just short of overwrought? Oh, high flown wording. I don't.
Yeah.
Because I mean, think about his word. I am rapidly losing interest in whatever you choose to do on the Earth's surface. Despoil the environment, slaughter yourselves to the last child. I no longer care. But when you export your violence to my, haughty, yes, like, and he speaks that way through the whole thing. But it's very comic book. It's very villainy. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and it works well. He doesn't need to twirl his mustache. He doesn't say
twirl in the mustaches.
And you get this idea right away. What the hell's going on? It's like, I'm going to send you down to the surface. I'm not a murderer. And they're like, no, we've come here to pledge ourselves to your cause. And he's like, I have no cause. And it's like, Magneto, you're abandoning your destiny. It's all like, the whole story is just set up like we're only on, like, well, if you want to include the splash pages at one page, we're only on the third page, and like, action, excitement, what's going on has been laid out. The storyline has already been plotted, like it's going to have something to do with Magneto and these people wanting to pledge themselves to a cause, and there's some kind of cause for mutant liberation. And imagine you're a first-time reader. You don't know who the fuck the X-Men are. You don't need to know. You're already in world. You know what I mean? You're already being taken along with the story. And that's why I think one of the reasons that it works. One of the points that I had, I did take a few notes when I was like rereading this issue. I mean, of course, I've read it a whole number of times, but I thought it was important to go back over it again. What's with the giant floating Magneto picture? You see this on page 5 here?
Yeah.
Like, if you look at it, like, it's supposed to be like they're in their command center here, right? And they're all like, oh my God, Asteroid M has reappeared. And it's like, it was reported destroyed. Yeah, but there's nothing to stop them from rebuilding it, they say. And if you take a look at the size of all of the people, like, what is with your 4-story picture of Magneto? Why did you... It just strikes me as funny. And the two guys at the bottom here, they're like recoiling in horror at this giant picture. Like,
it's even better than that, because look out in the distance. You got like ants sitting there up on the amphitheater. Right. It's bigger than a fucking 4 stories.
Oh yeah. If you take because a person who's like, if you assume these people in the foreground are like right in front of the screen, they're only as tall as one of Magneto's toes. Yep. Why do you have this high resolution picture of Magneto? It's great. And these two guys down at the bottom, I don't know why, but they just sort of like brought to mind like a bunch of like fleeing Japanese people going, oh
Magneto's coming.
This guy over in the top right hand corner, I mean, he perfectly sums up the whole thing, doesn't he? Look at his sweaty face, and oh my God, we have no choice then. We are initiating stage 1 of the Magneto protocols. It ups the stakes of like just how much they fear this man's power, that he's that powerful. And then you go down one panel and you've got super cool pre-Samuel L. Jackson Nick Fury.
Mm-hmm. For a time,
I love
David
this.
Hasselhoff.
Right? And that's how I say, I think it's an awesome changeover to Samuel L. Jackson. It fits because Nick Fury's character is it's not just an eye patch. He's grizzled, no nonsense, straight talking, been there, done that, practical dude. And so Samuel L. Jackson fills that role really, really nice. And it became something of a trope in Marvel, the Reed Richards hair as for character design, like the gray strips along the side of his head to make him look, you know what I mean? And it's, other than the eye patch, there was very little difference between Reed Richards and Nick Fury in terms of character design. So, that's cool to switch him over to something else.
Reed Richards was definitely a much thinner dude than Nick Fury.
Well, that's a good point. Yeah. I mean, it's just their faces without the eye patch would you be able to tell a difference?
Yeah. Well, it's comic book face.
Yeah. Yeah. So it leads to them where Nick Fury's here. He's talking to the president, who's supposed to be George H.W. Bush. If I'm Yeah, actually, I remember they're reading on later, and they're supposed to be. You get Magneto saying, "Your president thinks of himself as a prudent man," which is one of Bush 41's lines: "Prudency in leadership." So a little timely reference. If the Soviets act like hotheads, Mr. President, they could make things worse. Do you have an alternative? Well, that's a page turner, right? You want to see what's going on the next page, and the big reveal of the Jim Lee character redesigns. Their costumes are awesome. The way they look is awesome. Dynamic as fuck. So well done.
Dare I say, this is the iconic X-Men. Like, people look back at the yellow and blue jumpsuit era of the X-Men. And they'll say, that is, the X-Men sort of look. I mean, they had a uniform. Everyone looked like Cyclops looks right here. But by way of comparison to the wider public cultural conception of what the X-Men look like, who the X-Men are, it is hands down this look.
And so many people were introduced to the X-Men through the animated 90s series. And this is the character design and their outfit costume designs that informed the way they look in the animated series. And so it's like, yeah, it's all right here. And dare I say, Rogue's looking hot as hell there.
Of course, just hands down, that is the best Rogue character design of all time.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Not just because I'm a thirsty man, but because
in addition to your thirstiness, it's also objectively pretty cool.
I've always loved the idea of a superhero that wears a jacket. Like, that's always been a really cool idea. One of Cyclops' coolest designs was when he had a fucking bomber jacket over his blue and yellow there. I've always thought that that's a really cool idea, something that you don't see a whole lot of superheroes doing. And of course, the X-Men had that in spades. You had Rogue, you had Forge, you had Gambit. You had so many characters that had, their form-fitting superhero outfit, and then they wore a fucking coat over top of it.
Yeah. And two things that jump out at me just looking at this. It's like, I love Rogue's belt. It's like totally purposeless. It's always hanging loose, but hey, and what's she wearing it for? Because it's not to hold up her pants clearly, but I'm not arguing because it looks awesome. It really works. And you see some Liefeldian pouches on Cyclops' belt there. You gotta love that. It's
well, he's always had that, but no, the best thing about that, her belt there, Rogue's belt, I've always viewed that as a sort of early 90s. We can't quite do a belly button belt, so we might as well do something close to that, because there's no way that belt is going to hold anything.
What the hell's a belly button belt?
You've never heard of that? It's where women have a belly button piercing, and then they have a chain that goes around their waist.
Oh, okay.
Through the piercing. But seeing something like that, like, the only real purpose to that is to draw the eye to her huge, luscious hips.
Yes.
The only purpose to that belt.
How loose her belt is, especially if you look at like the cover, like it's very loose. It just accentuates how small her waist is, thus accentuates how shapely her hips are. It's Jim Lee definitely understands how to, like, if you take a look at the way Cyclops is drawn here. I mean, damn, Cyclops don't miss no days at the gym. It's it's superhero-y and super comic booky. Like, everyone's just like incredibly athletically formed because that's just how Jim Lee draws his stuff, and he does it very, very well. One thing that I did notice on this page is this is the beginning of it. If you read through each one of the bubbles, and don't worry for anyone who's actually bothering to listen, I won't read through all of it, but it's like, we see Assault Group A on screen, Cyclops, because that's who you are, guy with the glasses on, again, for the first time readers, right? Consisting of Rogue, Iceman, Angel, and Colossus, and they are listed from left to right. And thanks, Beast, Forge, blah, blah, blah. Everyone's being named, but it's happening in story for those who don't already know who these characters are. And then Storm over there says, X-Men, this is Storm. I object to this exercise. Immediately informing you as to what's going on. That's what you call talented writing. It's all when the next comic book we review, you're going to see that we're referencing how these things aren't happening. We won't let the cat out of the bag as to what that's going to be quite yet, but none of the narration that you see going on in the narration bubbles are introducing it. It's all through what the characters are saying. You're finding out who they are and what they're up to and why they're doing it. And I don't know. I think it works really well.
And I say, and just the pros to that too. The sort of actual wording, born with paranormal abilities that set them apart from the general run of humanity. And what part is it that they've chosen to do with those powers?
We see Jean Grey here hanging out with Professor X, and their conversation here is entirely like to set the scene, as well as like X-Men fans are understanding why the team is back together when they had been split up before. And yeah, okay, I'll be the one to say it. Jean Grey's looking pretty hot there. Just saying.
Yeah. I'll say ginger representation is not absent in X-Men.
Oh yeah, on the next page here, this is one of the things that stood out to me right away. The classic comic book or Marvel swear, cripes.
Cripes, yeah. Where the hell is that gone?
Well, you could just say, motherfucker, it doesn't matter now. Mm-hmm. The whole thing is a danger room battle, as we see on the next page. You got Colossus turning into his metallic form, busting through the window, Jean using a psychic attack against him. This is one thing that stood out to me. Psylocke does not have, at this point or any point before it, the hardened skin or superhuman strength, does she?
Nope.
But here she is with her flimsy little pipe cleaner arms smashing a robot with a upward heel palm thrust.
She's a ninja.
She's a ninja. Okay.
I ain't gotta explain shit.
All right. Yeah. Just being a little nitpicky, I guess.
Yeah. Psylocke is one of those characters that everyone has always had some sort of like ideological problem with, because how does a woman that looked like that is a superhero? How does that outfit work? I'm like, it's a fantasy comic book.
Of course, I never debated this stuff. It's like when I was a kid reading this, it never occurred to me any of those things. Like, it's like, yeah, it's a fantastic, hyper realistic, like beyond realistic world where like guys are super athletic, women are super athletic. Of course, the guys look all like, upper body strength beyond belief, super ripped, and the women all look super athletic and ripped themselves. What's the problem?
Yeah, I know, right?
Go away, Anita Sarkeesian. Quit looking at comic butts.
Well, man, all I gotta say right there, look at Gambit. They ain't no strategic butt covering there.
That's right. And he's supposed to be the super sexy one, right?
Yeah. Well, that's part of his mutant powers. They kind of bring that up in Gambit's first origin story, which was in, I want to say, oh good God, it was Uncanny X-Men. I think it was in the 160s. It was in the bit where the Shadow King came back and Storm was reverted back to the body of a child. And was escaping from the Shadow King. That was the first appearance of Gambit. Gambit helps her out in, I want to say it was like someplace like Morocco. Someplace really, really exotic and weird. Yeah, Gambit back then, he didn't use playing cards. He used little, like, spikes that looked like nails. And the way he charged them is he looked at them and like beams shot out from his eyes into the spikes, and it would charge them with kinetic energy and he could throw them. But in that series, they brought up the fact that Gambit has a preternatural sort of charm to him, a sort of telepathy that a lot of mutants have kind of latently. That he couldn't really control, but that's the reason why he has such animal magnetism when it comes to women.
Which he attempts to take advantage of by kissing a robot, which then explodes in his face because he thought it was Jean Grey.
Well, yeah. To be fair, if sex robots look like that, I'd go MGTOW too.
Well, yeah. Of course, Wolverine's the only one who gets through because he recognizes his super strong sense of smell, his super acute sense of smell. He knows that the robots are robots and not actually them. So, busts through the floor and bang, Charlie, you're dead. Gotta love it.
Snicked.
Yeah. That's
Bub,
you learn
snicked, bub.
Yeah, you learn a lot about his character right here, that he's not like the team player. It's like, if you would have slipped right now with those adamantium claws, and he's like, I don't slip, bub. And the whole point is, it shows that they're in the danger room, and what the danger room is. And Wolverine's like, I've had enough of this. I got better things to do. And he's off. But Nick Fury, here he is with the explanation of what's going on. He's enlisting the team to fight their old nemesis.
Soviets ain't happy at all about that, and they've pledged not to act unless provoked.
Well, see, and this is one point that like stood out for me right away in rereading it. You learn right off the bat that Rogue has some kind of special affinity or sympathy, because she's like, why? What's he done? A fight started on his doorstep, and this is way you talk, folks expect him to start nuking Mama Russia at any moment. And there you go, right? It's like all of a sudden she's the one talking on his behalf, and as the story progresses, you find out that she does indeed have a special affinity for him. And it's almost like it's story structure or something. I don't know. It's
I'll say Rogue has always been the sort of voice of reason for the group. Like, a lot of people are, have prejudices, and you say, he's our old enemy, we can't trust him, blah blah blah. And Rogue's like, well, I do. Stop being a dick.
Yeah. So here they are, back up on Asteroid M. This is when the see, I've heard people say it a bunch of different ways, whether comic book or not. Acolyte or Oculite?
Acolyte.
Whatevs. So the Acolytes here, as they're going to be called, and the people that were there to bring them back down to Earth. Yeah, I get in a big fight. Magneto walks down. I love Magneto's get up here. I mean, look at him walking around on Asteroid M. He's in silk robes, and he's...
Man, I wish my silk robes like clung to my thighs like that to show off my quadriceps.
Well,
and where the hell are his feet?
Well, I love how his pants, he's wearing yoga pants and a flowy top. I got a better question. In the bottom corner frame, what happened to his nose?
Yeah.
Drew that one a little quick, did you, Jim?
I can't fault him too much. Like,
no,
even with saying where the hell are his feet, that's still a really awesome pose.
Fuck yeah. Look at him walking down the big staircase, because, just sweet. So the one of the we come seeking sanctuary, my lord. Yeah, no, you don't. Blaster. And this is what, of course, what makes Magneto go nuts. He turns his own weapon on him. Brutal. And this is where Magneto really does begin to turn to start his cause up again. For deterrence to be credible, deterrence for them not to mess with you, it must be couched in terms those flat scans understand. Flat scans? Those genetic dead ends. Unblessed with our mutant abilities. What terms, Cortez, do you suggest? And it's a dun dun dun.
Yeah, I love it because, like, if you really want to get into the overall story of everything from the beginning of this issue all the way to the end of the third issue, this is all a long con by Cortez. Like,
absolutely,
it was Cortez insinuating himself with Magneto, and then using his mutant abilities to supercharge Magneto's mutant abilities, make Magneto fucking crazy, just so that Cortez could live out his dream of lording it over someone more powerful than he is, and it backfires horribly on him. It's the sort of story where, like, after you realize exactly what's going on, you get to see the bad guy get his comeuppance from the bad guy that was being manipulated, and there is no better sort of vindication you can get as a comic book reader than that.
Yeah, and you get the that it is paced out, like it's, I mean, you just jump to the last page of the third issue for sure, but it's like it's a well-structured idea. Like, you have the writer, in this case, Claremont and Lee, thinking like, okay, we want to bring back in Magneto, we want to tell the story, and we're going to have Cortez, and we're going to do this stuff, and it's dropped piece by piece in terms of rising action, and they make Magneto absolutely look like the villain, and he's just got these mutants that one is protection. They want to come under his auspices when it's really, there's a big turnaround. That's not what's going on, but it's paced out excellently.
Mm-hmm. Like, yeah, you actually feel for Cortez here. Like, Cortez is the guy that's sitting there going, like, I wanted to join your cause. I heard about everything. I want to fight for our people. And Magneto's all like, okay, I'll fight for our people. Like, yeah. And then you come to suddenly learn about Cortez's abilities and how he's manipulating Magneto.
Right, and he puts him in the position of, Magneto, don't you understand? Like, they've already brought this violence to your doorstep. They're not going to stop. They consider you a threat, and plants in his mind the idea of, you need a deterrence. So what's the deterrence? Go get some nukes.
Yeah.
That's real deterrence. And
steal all of Soviet Russia's nukes.
Yeah. And you get Magneto showing up here, and he, we won't drag you through the whole narration here, but this is a sub that Magneto himself sunk years before the Leningrad, and he deflected the attack and sunk the sub after he was attacked by Russia. And I'm going to go there and get the nukes. And of course, the X-Men show up to stop him. The battle ensues. I like the idea how they show Magneto, like, just how powerful his abilities can be. That it can be really, like, I can grab all of these missiles and float them up into orbit, or do something so simple as take a piece of metal and smash somebody with it, like in this case, Beast. And you get Gambit saying, still playing nice, monsieur, by using that wreckage to give Beast a tummy ache instead of punching it straight through him. And it's like, yeah, he does have that power. Yeah, you could just could have just taken his head right off too. And this is what we were talking about before we started recording. I don't get what happens here in the bottom panel.
Here, I'm just gonna do a real quick thing here. Do playing cards contain metal?
And that's what. Okay, since he's throwing these cards, is he using like a special deck of metal cards so they fly further? So like he can like Gambit. I would
hope he's not.
Going into battle with Magneto with metal. Yeah. But it's like, I won't charge these cards enough to kill. And then a fortunate decision for you, young man. Or what is happening here? Those two motion streaks look like he just redirected the cards back at him. How? In what way? I'm not.
Unless the cards are metal.
Yeah. I'm not getting what he's putting down here.
Apparently they do make metal playing cards, but these are not them.
All right, so little nitpicky fail there. It's a small one, but
it's okay. It's okay.
And then of course we got Psylocke coming up from behind with, got him. And yeah, there wasn't a 12-year-old boy in the world who didn't love this panel.
Oh yeah.
Just saying.
I mean, that's like Psylocke's, MO for a lot of her time in the 90s is just spread eagle.
Yeah. Jim Lee knew how to take advantage of everyone's physiology, right? Like, he just drew everybody as like super athletic and ripped, to be sure. Why not take advantage of it? That was his style.
Oh yeah.
So you got the 1 point right here where Wolverine actually gets something in on the guy. Like, Magneto comes out of this fight, unscathed basically, except for Wolverine coming in here. I really love this page. What is it? 26, where Cyclops decides at the battle, like, this isn't what I wanted. We didn't come here to like basically kill the guy, and that's the way it's turning out. So it's like, I'm going to knock Magneto back and break up the fight, as it were. And Magneto gets knocked back into the submarine. And I love this narration. Chris Claremont at his fucking best. He's blasted back, and he's like, by the Eternal, the submarine, its crew. Magneto finds himself surrounded by these skeletons. Now, though, at last, he finds himself face to face with the consequences of his acts. And he remembers another time, other bodies, bones still clothed with the flesh of family and friends, tossed into a lime-soaked pit, and him along with them. Only he was still alive, and somehow he clawed the way to the surface. And it's just, this is what I believe is called characterization and character development. I think this is what we call a little bit of background.
A little bit.
A little bit. And this is for X-Men fans who know of Magneto's history and what went on with the Holocaust and his background. And this is what it's referencing. And it's so well written. And it's so dark. And you get this panel of Magneto, like almost looking like he's ready to pass out, like the horror of it all, right? It's really well done. Yeah, your villains have dimensionality to them. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? Like it's the antagonist, he has motivations, and you as the audience, you want multidimensional characters because it draws you into the story.
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, one drum that I've been beating for a very, very, very long time was the fact that the test I give all of my friends, I say, okay, so the reason why I like DC more than I like Marvel now. Now, don't get me wrong, I fucking love the X-Men. I grew up on the X-Men. The X-Men is my jam. However, the one thing that I always bring up is the fact that the story is only, or rather, a hero and their story is only as good as the villain that they fight. A villain needs to be multifaceted. A villain needs to be sympathetic. A villain needs to be someone that you can see from their perspective why they're doing what they're doing. And it's made all the more tragic that they're doing that because they're entered into a situation where that is the only their only recourse in trying to solve the problem that they're trying to solve.
Right.
So the question and the way I pose the question to a lot of my friends. Now, mind you, it may have different results here with you because you are much more knowledgeable in comics than a lot of my friends would be. But the layman, I get a more interesting response. I just as a thought experiment here, I'd like to do it with you.
Okay.
Name as many Marvel villains as you possibly can.
Just anyone from Marvel?
Marvel villains.
Okay. Doctor Doom, because he's my favorite, so he came to mind first. I guess you'd call Galactus a villain of sorts. Dr. Octopus. Kingpin. Oh Christ! Well, there's Magneto because he's our villain here. He was a hero, but then not Sabretooth. Oh shit! God, there's so many. Back to Spider-Man. There's Rhino. There's the Shocker. There's Electro. Venom, of course, and Carnage. And I'm just trying to think. God, there's so many villains in Spider-Man. I can't really.
And see that's one that I think is kind of funny actually. When I brought this up to one of my buddies, every single villain that he named was a Spider-Man villain. And I'm like, you know what? Spider-Man does have a lot of villains. His rogues gallery is pretty extensive.
Yeah.
Compare that to, like, say, someone like the X-Men. The X-Men don't have very many. Then I would say, name as many DC villains as you possibly can. And the funniest thing about this is that almost every time I pose this question to any of my friends, they'll name a handful of Marvel villains. But they will name, at the very least, twice as many DC villains, and 90% of them are Batman villains.
Really?
Yep.
Yeah, I would name largely Batman villains.
And that's very interesting about that because, I mean, for me, like when I've gone and done this thought experiment, I name like a handful of Spider-Man villains because I was never really that interested in Spider-Man, but I would name things like Venom, Carnage, Shrike, Doppelganger.
Right.
Let's see here. Stuff like that. Was it Mysterio, Rhino?
Oh, Mysterio, yeah.
All of those. But then, you had, for me, I would sit there and go like Magneto, Sabretooth, Toad, Blob, Avalanche, Pyro, the White Queen, Black Tom Cassidy, Arcade, Mojo, Apocalypse, Mystique, you know, the four horsemen of the apocalypse, which I guess is kind of a package deal with Apocalypse, but you know, you have all of these sorts of X-Men villains, but you know, I find that DC usually have more memorable villains, mainly because and Batman is the major sort of stepping stone for that, is the fact that they're much more relatable villains. They're the ones that you can see how and why they got to the point where they did, and makes the story all the more tragic, because even though they're the bad guys and you don't want them to win, you can see why they're doing what they're doing, and you kind of do feel bad for them for doing what they're doing. Which is one of the reasons why I think Magneto is such a great villain, because Magneto very much is that sort of villain.
Well, I mean, not just a villain, but like villain, then ally, then team member, then villain again, then ally, then he could play both sides. He is like could switch sides. He's somebody that could have a change of heart in a given direction. You know. Speaking of Magneto, I think we were reading an X-Men comic here.
Yeah.
Just goddamn comics rack fucking sucks. Okay. Oh yeah, this is the part where you see a little bit more of the reveal with Rogue showing the sympathy towards Magneto. It's like, Rogue, what are you doing? What we should have done from the start. I'm going to go talk to the man, and she flies up into orbit just to. Don't you see? You've got everybody spooked, and sort of gives him this speech. And unfortunately, I thought this was a great writing idea. What do you have Magneto do in response to like sort of this? He has a great affection for Rogue, and she's pitching this very reasonable idea to him. So what's he going to do? Just be like the cold-hearted bastard? And like, I've made up my mind. No, 2 rockets blast her from behind, which which seals the deal for him. He's like, see, don't you understand? Like, I mean, she's not going to be injured by it, if you know what I mean. But it's like, there is your answer, child, and mine. Whatever we decide, the world will never accept us. And this, of course, he lets off one of his weapons, one of his atomic weapons, just to show how serious he's being. Right over Russia, which is, not a good thing.
It's fine. There's not too many electronics in Russia to really worry about an EMP. So. And
here's the beginning of the ongoing storyline that you alluded to earlier. You've got Magneto back on Asteroid M, and he's just cut up horribly from Wolverine's claw attack. You got Cortez beginning to weave his spell over him. Until then, rest, Lord. Let my humble powers heal you. Well, they're not just healing him, are they? It's a great idea. Rogue's disappeared on them. She ends up in Genosha, which if you're somebody who's like a big, longtime X-Men fan, the Extinction Agenda and that whole storyline, this is a great, like, to go to that well-known island.
I think you'll find that it's Genosha.
I don't care.
Because it's genes.
Is it? Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
It's an ethno-state, dude.
Okay. Like, I understand that, they use mutants as slave labor, but like, I had never heard the term said before. It's Genosha.
Yeah, it's Genosha, yeah.
Every time that I was reading it, I always read it as Genosha. I don't know. No, that's just what I heard inside my head.
Yeah, it's Genosha.
Huh. All right, fine. I'm wrong. I'll live with it. You got
yeah, you're wrong.
Rogue waking up in Genosha's hospital. And I love the pacing here. Like, she wakes up in the hospital. Where am I? You're in Genosha. Boom, the walls explode, and here are the
acolytes.
The fight's on. It goes on. Wolverine's attacking. There's another crotch shot of Psylocke. Any thoughts at all on any of this? I mean, it's rapid action, super conversation.
Oh, yeah.
And here's
Who
one
talks
thing
that much when they're beating the shit out of each other?
as the perfect example. I know, right? And one of the guys gets called Delgado, and he's like, there is a Major Harry Delgado commanding the Shield Pursuit Force that was captured by Magneto. Coincidence? Different guys, same name? Or maybe Major was working as a sleeper, working with the clowns who was supposedly chasing. Or maybe he switched sides. Or maybe somebody forced him. All in the time that Beast threw him, they had this conversation.
All in the time that they were doing a fastball special.
That's right. No, it's only a fastball if Colossus throws him, I thought.
No, it can be done with Beast. It's just
Oh.
if anyone throws Wolverine, it's a
Okay.
fastball special.
The fight ensues, and you got Fabian Cortez just he's always got that arrogant smirk or that evil smile, man.
Mm-hmm.
Indeed, I am as proud of my affiliation as you of yours. Magneto!
No
He
need for
knows.
such melodrama, X-Man.
And I remember flipping to this page as a kid for the first time, and I thought, holy Christ, it's going to take me a week to read all this. And it totally wasn't. It's just, again, I don't think every comic book needs to be this talky. I absolutely don't. It's just Claremont does it and does it well.
Yeah.
You got the whole thing of him saying, look, they're under my protection, and I'm not going to allow you to do them any harm because we're Genosha, and this place is just, use mutant slave labor, and I'm not going to allow them to fall under their tender mercies.
Mm-hmm.
Right into the cause Magneto's gotten by this point. You figure since you live above the world, that puts you above its laws as well. Laws written by humans for humans, Wolverine, as out of date as the race that created them.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, wow, man, you really have gone full retard with this whole thing.
I was gonna say, yeah, he just went right back to it, man.
Yeah. And it ends with them he declares Asteroid M to be a sovereign state, which is like, wow, what, like, at the beginning of the comic, talk about a story arc, right? At the beginning of the comic, he's like, this is my private home. This is like my respite from what's going on. I don't care what you do on Earth. It's no longer my responsibility. And now here he is, because of what's happened over the time of the story. Every mutant has automatic citizenship by virtue of their being Homo sapiens superior on Asteroid M, and I will protect them. And if any harm done to a mutant is harm done to me, and I shall respond accordingly. Like, wow. It's just fucking awesome. And then, of course, the last panel, you get Maria McTaggart coming with the this terrible thing that's happening. Banshee, it's all my fault. Which is just like, what? How? What? Like it.
This is gonna be a thing with you and me here, Polly.
What?
It's Moira McTaggart. Moira.
All right. So apparently it's going to be like a long-standing battle between like what my mind told me it was when I was a kid and what Inquisitor to actually be. I said at the beginning, I'm not an X-Men expert.
I know.
So it's all good. And if anybody does end up watching, it's like, whoever this Polly guy is, he doesn't know shit throughout the comments. Watch.
Well, let's put it this way: you'll have just as much sort of gloating ability when we start reading Spider-Man, because I don't know shit about Spider-Man.
Yeah, Wilson Fisk, you fucking moron. But there it is. That is all the way to the end of Rubicon, X-Men #1, Volume 2. I love it. This comic is as good as I remember it. Like,
and look at the next image though. The next page.
Oh, the villains get all of the pinups.
Spread. Yeah. Well, I'm just saying the villain spread.
Yeah, and if memory serves, like, I'd have to go, oh yeah, that's a question I wanted to ask at the beginning. Okay, do you have all 5 variants?
Yes, in my long box.
Do you? Okay,
Yep.
So do I. I'm trying to remember if I bought this as it was new or I bought it like a couple of years after the fact.
It was one of those things I actually had to put in a pull list at our comic shop because it was highly anticipated and they had already sold out when I went in to pick up my reserved copies.
But it's funny, in going back and reading it, the only other reading is the glossy one, the one with the gatefold covers on front and back. Now that I think about it, those original newsprint ones, I mean, all of my stuff from back in the day is all in polybags, right?
Mm-hmm.
Fingers probably haven't touched them since I first read them and bagged them. So Loki's up there. Loki becomes a villain at some point to the X-Men in this.
I don't think right off the bat. Trying to think of a time where Loki. I don't remember him ever being a villain like that.
Who's the dude behind White Queen there?
Oh, it's Black Tom Cassidy.
Black Tom Cat. Yeah, no idea who it is.
I believe that's Black Tom Cassidy. I think it's the leader of the Hellfire Club.
Oh. So, I mean, looking through these other pinups, I don't know. I personally like this one, like the Blast from the Past. We got like Jim Lee drawn super retro, original X-Men team.
I'm wrong. It's not Black Tom Cassidy. It's Sebastian Shaw, who's the leader of the Hellfire Club.
Okay. I don't think Jim Lee's art meshes with the old school style. It looks funny to me. I don't know why.
Mainly it's Jean Grey that looks weird.
Yeah.
All the rest of them look okay.
How funny does Cyclops' vision sensor eye cover visor thing look like?
Yeah.
And by the time they didn't really change Beast's outfit, by the time remember when they branched off and became X Factor, that's exactly what his costuming was like when he was with X Factor.
Yeah.
A little bit of cheesecake here, a little bit.
Yeah. Oh man, I loved the Marvel swimsuit editions that they would do.
They did Marvel swimsuit editions?
Oh yeah, you've never seen those?
No, that's hilarious.
Oh yeah. And there's a character that didn't appear in this issue at all. Right over there next to Colossus. Good old.
Is that Jubilee?
Jubilation Lee.
Yeah. Who?
I personally think that she's a very underrated character.
Who is that supposed to be on Beast's back? It's not Shadowcat, because I mean she's not part of the X-Men at this point. No. She's with Excalibur.
Is that Dazzler? No. Can't be Dazzler. I can't really tell.
And why is Cable on a deflated beach ball, I'm guessing, in the bottom left-hand corner?
Because Cable hasn't actually shown up yet.
Okay.
Why is Iceman being a dick and freezing the pool?
Who's that supposed to be with Iceman?
I don't know. I mean, the one that's trying to get fresh there with Jean is obviously Gambit.
Right. Oh, I never noticed that before. He's got a bottle of suntan lotion. Mm-hmm. And apparently Jean is using her electricity powers to cause electricity to fly out of his fingers.
Yeah, I would say that the one in the back there with Iceman kind of looks like Psylocke, but you know she's kind of front and center.
Yeah, she's super front and center. So when you look at the things to come, you know, you got Omega Red up there up front, and then Shatterstar? No,
that's
Longshot.
Longshot, yeah.
Right. And is that supposed to be the Brood in the background? Are those Brood aliens?
Yeah. In fact, actually, I think it's only I want to say like 3 or 4 issues in where the Brood actually make an appearance. It's during a whole story about Gambit. Gambit goes back down to New Orleans because of the tithe, and come to find out that he can't be involved with the tithe because Ghost Rider is infected by the Brood. So you get to see Ghost Rider with a brood skull that's on fire.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't recall that at all, but that's something I want to see. Well, that brings us to the end of the comic. Fuck, how long have we been recording now? Hour 15, hour 20?
Let's see here. Hour 10.
Hour 10.
Mm-hmm.
Probably longer than we should go. I mean, how long can, listeners, viewers, what have you, possibly listen to somebody, no, you've got it all wrong. How long can they take the frustration for? But in any case, like I said, want it to be a discussion. Want it to be interactive. See what everybody thinks. And what we missed out on. How could you guys not have talked about what happened on page, 15 because it was so fucking cool when so-and-so said this and did that? Absolutely. Definitely want to hear those ideas. But Inquisitor, any final thoughts on easily one of the best comic books that I read back in the day? I mean, I mean, it definitely made you want to. Did it make you want to buy issue 2? Oh, fuck yeah! It left you like, just what's going to happen next?
Well, this kickstarted my love for the X-Men entirely. Like I said before, I read the Uncanny X-Men too, but this series in particular kicked off a whole different sort of story structure. You had the Uncanny X-Men that had continuity with the Uncanny X-Men, but this was entirely brand new. This was just the X-Men. And for the most part, a lot of what was happening in this was much more personable stories. They were stories talking or, dealing with characters and character development, whereas Uncanny X-Men was dealing with events and things happening in the world. So in my opinion, this is the shining example of where the X-Men could be the X-Men.
And the teams have been split up between gold and blue. And then before we start recording, I was talking about how you sort of see like the blue and gold teams reunited, but then not for long. You were telling me that they...
for the most part, I think Uncanny X-Men was relegated to the gold team, and X-Men was the blue team. Gold was led by Storm?
Storm and Cyclops, respectively.
Yeah, and Cyclops was blue, yeah. So the weird part about it was that Jean and Cyclops were on different teams. I do remember that distinctly because it was a major deal with the first event, and that's an idea for a future sort of video series that we do, is the events that happened, because the X-Men had a lot of them.
Right.
Yeah. The one that immediately comes to mind is the Fatal Attractions event, where Wolverine has his adamantium skeleton ripped out.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen the memes, but I've never read the issue myself, which is something that I'm looking forward to. And
it's actually a really good series.
Yeah.
I have all of those. What was kind of cool about those issues too, this is also, again, in the height of the speculator boom.
Right.
All of those issues had a holographic image on the front of it.
Oh, right.
Yep. So they all had like this gimmick sort of thing, but it was the big crossover events. Like you see this happen a lot nowadays. Even DC just did it a while ago, and they're doing it again with Doomsday Clock. But the one that I can think of recently was The Button, which was a 4-issue series that started with Batman, continued in Flash, continued in Batman, continued in Flash, or concluded in Flash. The way that they did it is they had a sequential story, but you had to buy issues of comics that you might not necessarily collect to be able to get the whole story. So it would be the beginning is in Uncanny X-Men, then it would continue in X-Force, X-Factor, X-Men, Excalibur, and conclude with Wolverine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, and that's exactly what Fatal Attractions was.
Any final thoughts?
Hands down, one of the best comic series of all time. I do think that Jim Lee is he sets the example. And
Yeah.
there's a major reason
Yeah.
why Jim Lee's art is so highly valued and is so iconic nowadays, because he really does set the industry standard. You know, and it doesn't even matter what comic is necessarily that you're talking about for Jim Lee. You know, we're talking about X-Men #1, but the same sort of visual awe can be directed at Hush.
Right.
So
And
yes,
I mean, there's lots of other artists that I hold in a hell of a lot, like Rick Leonardi. I'm a big fan of his stuff.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many others. Like, I mean, John Romita Jr. I think gets unnecessarily beaten up on. I really like his style, that he's willing to, not copy. And this is the era when people didn't copy off of 3D models constantly, and trace photographs for their backgrounds and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's Jim Lee's definitely in a category all his own. I'm glad I'm not an artist, so I don't have to look jealously upon this man's skill. I could just appreciate it as like, oh God, like you said, the awe that it inspires. Yeah, when you look at it, I mean, you just look at Beast here. He's just like, just fantastic. He looks like he's leaping off the page. It's really dynamic. For final thoughts for me, yeah, sort of repetition of what I said before. I mean, it was. It does everything that a first issue absolutely needs to do. It introduces all the characters, and it excites the audience. It introduces everybody in a fantastic way that makes you want to buy the next issue. You want to know what's going on the next page, and you want to buy the next issue next month because you're actually fascinated by the stories and captured by the characters. It's great. In future installments of our ongoing series, I would like to definitely do reviews where one of us has not ever read the comic. So it's like, this is one where you both read it multiple times, and it's an old classic. And I thought that was a great place. We both thought that was a great place to start. It's like, you've recommended ones, and like, there's certain Spider-Man stories that are like the iconic ones that I'd like to have you read over for the first time. Like Kraven's Last Hunt comes to mind. It's, legendary. It's a 6-parter, so it would be like a fast review of like the series as a whole, as opposed to individual issues of it. But I mean, holy shit, was that some dark stuff. I mean, I bought it retroactively, like long after it had already come out. But I remember, and it happened across 3: Spectacular Spider-Man, Web of Spider-Man, and Amazing Spider-Man, 2 issues in each. But so it was a cross series event. But holy shit, dude, I'd love to have you read that, because it would understand sort of or help people understand sort of the darker elements that went on in Spider-Man. It was taking this really Z-list character, Kraven the Hunter, and turning him into somebody really cool and tragic and scary all at the same time. Fucking awesome stuff. So yeah, there it is. Hope the audience liked it. More reviews to come, and I'm sure we'll figure out the format as we go. It'll be smoother and better in the future, I'm sure, as we try different things. If you have suggestions, absolutely, I'm interested to hear. Inquisitor, last words will be yours.
I will do my best to make sure that I'm gonna get some soundproofing foam and get a good sound booth, so people don't hear the goddamn trains in Chicago.
All right, everybody. Again, I'm Polydub. Thanks for listening, and
I'm Inquisitor.
See you later, everybody.
Take care.